All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I am so excited about tonight's session. My name is Dessie Nash, and I have the honor of serving as the president for the Black Alumni Leadership Council, BALC for short. But before we begin tonight's session, I want to quickly share with you the what and why of BALC, and then provide you an update of what we have accomplished in such a short period of time. So to begin, I want to share what the why is of BALC and our purpose. So if you could bring up the slide for us. Thanks. So as you can see, the purpose of BALC is to serve as a stimulus for the inclusion of the Black alumni voices on campus, to advise and support the institution's leadership in the advancement of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Also to unify the Black alumni and foster professional and personal networks, support student success, and then support the diversity and recruitment of faculty, staff, and students at TU. If we could go to the next slide. BALC was officially formed in January of 2021 with 13 members, and we certainly want to grow this group. And later tonight, you will have an opportunity to learn how you could become part of BALC. A few things that we have accomplished in this short time period is the creation of our operational committees, including our bylaws, the creation of our mission and our focus going forward, raising $35,000 for our endowment, and we will be able to award our first scholarship this year at homecoming. And then also having a marquee event at homecoming, which I encourage everyone to register. Following tonight's session, we'll share with you how you can join BALC, and we encourage everyone tonight to become a part of this wonderful leadership council. So to begin, tonight we will hear from two of TU's administrators as we discuss the nurturing culturally diverse and inclusive campus community. As part of the current strategic plan, the TU is continually working to improve recruitment, inclusion, for students and faculty from underrepresented groups to fulfill the university's vision of a truly diverse community. First, we'll answer a couple questions for you all that were submitted, and thank you for all the pre-submitted questions. And then we'll open it up to hear from you. All of your microphones are muted, but if you are able and comfortable, we ask that you turn on your cameras. We want this session to be very interactive, and we want to see you. And also, we encourage you to ask questions. You can place them in the chat or raise your hands. The session tonight will be positive and informative. And in keeping with that spirit, I ask that you take this opportunity to learn, reflect, and be engaged with our guests. Please note that tonight's session will be recorded to allow those who could not attend to watch, and then also allow you the opportunity to see the replay if you missed anything. And finally, I ask that everyone please come to the Black Alumni Reunion this year. It will be at October 7th, and we'll drop the information in the chat so you can register and be a part of our first marquee event. So tonight, I am very pleased to introduce our panelists. We first have our TU President, Brad Carson, and Kelli McLoud-Schingen, the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So to begin, President Carson, I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Dessie. It's my honor to be here with you tonight. I've been in office now just a couple of months, and I'm still learning much about TU. But I have the advantage of being a Tulsa native. I grew up in this area, went to high school down the road in Jinx, as did my wife, began my legal career in downtown Tulsa, and of course was in politics in Eastern Oklahoma and the counties surrounding Tulsa in the early part of my career too. It's great to be back. And for those of you who haven't followed kind of my arrival, I came most recently from the University of Virginia. So I spent 6 years in the Obama administration Defense Department, and then was a professor at the University of Virginia before being recruited back to be the 21st president of TU. We have a lot to talk about tonight, so I won't belabor my opening comments other than to say what my initial goals are. which is we want to make TU a larger, more successful, more diverse, more enriching school for the students who choose to attend here. So I want to grow our student body to 1,000. I want to go out and recruit in new pockets of people across the country. I want to introduce some new programs that will bring students here, programs on the kind of cutting edge of what's happening in society, whether it's in cybersecurity or energy transitions. I really want to work too on retaining those students who enroll. We are not the worst school in the country by any margin on these kind of metrics, but we have room to improve too, about ways of keeping students who come here and making them successful and graduating in 4 or 5 years. Very important goal. And then I want to go out and encourage the people who are students at TU, as well as our faculty and staff, to have a bigger public impact in the community that has so many needs around it, right? A university to be successful, must excel at teaching, at research, and also having this kind of social impact. So that's a major goal of mine. I look forward to working with all of you. Dessie and I are already acquainted, and I look forward to seeing her next week when I'm in New York. But everyone here is, I would invite you to my office or to have a Zoom call personally. I look forward to getting to know you. I believe in the mission of BALC. I know how important you're going to be to the plans that I have for the university. And I appreciate you being in attendance here tonight. Kelly, who is my vice president here at the University of Tulsa, why don't you say a few words of introduction of yourself, and then we can throw it back to Dessie and begin our conversation.
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. It is truly an honor to be with you today to talk a little bit about what's been happening in the short time since I've been here at TU. We're coming up on 1 year. I started November 1st, 2020. And it was very interesting for me to begin my career at TU virtually. And so happy to be on campus as of August 1st, regularly in the mix of students and faculty and the energy and everything that attracted me to returning to higher education in the first place. The work that we've been doing on diversity, equity, and inclusion since I arrived has been very encouraging. We have basically moved from the department that was originally called the Office for Diversity Engagement to a full department. And so we are now the Department for Equity, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I think I should probably just say that if you hear me speak or engage with me at all, you'll hear me talk more about inclusion and belonging for increasing diversity, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity on our campus. Because I think that if we don't start with inclusion, if we don't first start with creating a space where people feel as if they belong and are seen and heard and valued, then we're not going to get the population that we want, and we certainly won't be able to retain them. So that's the process, and that's how we begin. And when I first arrived, my colleague and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we were going to set up strategy for our office. We wanted to drive it. We wanted to be in front of it instead of behind it. And so much of what we did was spent a lot of time in retreat when we arrived, and we came up with 4 pillars that drive everything that we do. And the first is diversity, equity, and inclusion, education and training, which is critical to creating more inclusion and belonging on a campus. But we also wanted to pull out some very specific areas like advocacy for our students. You know, when I talked to many of the students on campus, they said, we want to make sure that there's somebody in some of the higher levels of offices, in the meetings with the boards, who constantly speak from the lens of the students to make sure that their voices are being elevated into the places that they don't typically have access to. And then access is the other part, making sure that our students have access to academic success, support, access to financial support and success. We want to work with them in order to have access to opportunity like study abroad. We are discovering that many of our students of color and our first generation students don't tend to come from families or communities where studying abroad is a norm. So we wanted to be able to provide some access for that type of support. And then belonging, you know, again, this all goes in line with inclusion and equity for me. So creating a space where everyone feels as if they belong, and that belonging that we want to focus on isn't just for our students, but also for our faculty and staff and administrators, and something that we believe will be important and TU being the institution that we want to be, so that everybody feels as if they are a hurricane and are proud to be able to state that. So that's the work that we've been doing. There's much more to say, but I'll wait for your questions before I take up too much time in the intro.
Well, thank you, President Carson and Kelly. Certainly appreciate the intros. I want to jump right into a couple of the pre-submitted questions, and then I will open it up to those of you who are in attendance. And Kelly, this question is for you. And the question is around, you spoke, one of the pillars was around education and training. So this question is, can you talk a little bit more about the staff and faculty training and the effectiveness of that, specifically around, certainly a big issue is campus security and potential implicit biases?
Sure, thank you for that question. There was a lot in there, right? So we are committed to doing the level of training that is necessary. Most of you may or may not know that I did a lot of consulting prior to returning to higher education. And some of the clients that I worked with were clients like the Tulsa Police Department, Ponca City Police Department, the Coconino County Sheriff's Department. So I've worked with a number of different institutions around their policing and creating cultural competency training for those officers so that they can respond with a more culturally, from a place of cultural humility, and to be much more sensitive to the way that cultures communicate. And so that is absolutely on the table for the work that we're doing with the security. We're in the process of hiring some new security officers. We're talking a little bit about the approach of our officers. Some of the conversation is around if they're to carry. Has it happened yet? No. But it is in the process. We're in the conversations of laying out a timeline that makes sense, not just for those officers, but also for what myself and my colleague Amanda can do, in addition to the number of other things that we have on our docket for the training. So, but it is a priority for us. It's something that we know is important, and we want to make sure that, as I said before, our students feel comfortable, that they don't feel as if they are going to be targeted on campus, and that they know that they will have a process by which the officers can become much more culturally inclusive and competent in working with so many different populations, not just our students of color, but also our international students who the way that our policing processes work is different from many of our other from many other countries. So making sure that they are aware of that and giving them that training is going to be a critical part of this work. So if you wanted to know a timeline, I'm thinking that we'll get started around November, December, but definitely get going in the next year.
And thank you for that. And that's certainly encouraging to hear the sense of urgency around that and the critical part that it plays, especially when we think about retaining and recruiting students. President Carson, this question is for you. And you talked about increasing enrollment. And as we know that TU can be expensive. So can you talk to us about plans around making the cost of TU affordable for our underserved and under-resourced students, and how that plays into your plan of increasing student enrollment?
Yeah, absolutely. It costs each year at the University of Tulsa about $50,000 to educate one student. And so irrespective of what you're actually paying in tuition, you're heavily subsidized by the endowment and auxiliary sources of revenue. But we're really fortunate. We have an endowment that's one of the largest in the entire Midwest. And on a per student basis is really only rivaled by Rice and Washington University in St. Louis. And that helps us afford to provide programs that many students can't otherwise afford. So one of my goals at the university is to say that we need to look at how other schools are providing financial aid to their students. I do believe at TU, and I've seen from some of the the questions that were presented before the meeting, that we have lots of students who are relatively low income, who still struggle to afford TU despite the financial aid we give them. So we have to dramatically increase, using our endowment proceeds, the financial aid given to low income, first generation students and others who are struggling with the financial aspects and financial burdens of college. And we have the resources to do that. At the same time, that means we have to rethink how we give financial aid across the board. Many of our merit scholarships, for example, go to the wealthiest students who attend TU. And so we need to move to what I call a more progressive world, right, where we think about need as a bigger driving factor in our financial aid decision making. That's not been the history of TU, but it's one that we're going to inaugurate this year. So it does play into how we grow to 1,000 students, right? To do that, we have to make people realize that TU offers extraordinary value. If you want to go to a school where you're in a class of 400, where you're anonymous to your professor, where you never get to know anyone on the faculty or any of your teachers, TU is not the school for you, right? We are a unique school in the Midwest. The student-faculty ratio is 8.6 to 1. In arts and sciences, it's as low as 6 to 1. We have a $1.4 billion endowment, as I mentioned. And we need to go out and tell people that this is an extraordinary school. And we have the resources to make it within reach of any student who wants to go. And that, again, means more generous financial aid policies, sometimes at the expense of merit scholarships that are going to kind of the top end of the socioeconomic ladder. And that's really the strategy. Everyone is on board with this approach. Kelly and Rick Dixon, our athletic director, and all of the deans, many faculty are out recruiting. And our goal is to find the best students in the entire Midwest, if not the country, and tell them that if you are capable of succeeding in the rigors of a TU education, that we can make it affordable to you. I believe we have the resources to do that, and that's our strategy.
And thank you for that. And that's certainly great to hear the innovation around making that resource. And your answer was also a perfect segue into my next question. And it's around the support systems in place to ensure the students from our underrepresented backgrounds receive the appropriate guidance and academic assistance as they progress towards their towards their degree. You had mentioned in your opening comments around the strategic plan and revamping the curriculum, adding cybersecurity. So what support systems, and either President Carson or Kelly, you can answer this question, are in place to ensure that the students receive the appropriate guidance and academic assistance?
Well, I start, and then I'll throw it over to Kelly to add some of her thoughts to this. So for the first time, really, we're trying to identify students who are at a high risk of not staying at TU and finishing their education. We're doing that through some predictive analytics that looks at your high school education, what degree programs you're pursuing, whether you're first generation, whether you're a Pell Grant recipient, and dozens of other metrics that go into us creating for the first time, a list of students who we are concerned about whether they're going to stay at TU or not. And then we have introduced this year an intensive case management approach, where we have a group of faculty and staff who are meeting every single week, identifying these students, asking how they're doing, talking to their professors, talking to the students themselves, getting me and other deans involved and talking to these students to make sure that they're succeeding, and identifying the barriers to success. Sometimes it's a financial barrier, and we try to rework the financial aid package. Sometimes it's as simple as we found this year that students can't afford the books, or they're delayed in getting the books. And so having the university either pay or provide upfront the books that they're going to need for their classes. Sometimes we find students who lack the social capital to kind of understand how universities work. They don't have family members who've gone to school before, and the university experience is a shocking one to them. And so making sure that they have everything from the mental health resources to, we have student success coaches now that every student works with. They can help them with the executive skills of functioning here. So I think really for the first time, we have a very intensive effort to find students who are at risk of not retaining, and finding ways to keep them here. And we are adopting best practices from across the country. We have scoured the nation. I think we really have some of those innovative, comprehensive retention strategies that you'll find from everything from surveys of their social belonging to dedicated first-year experience cohorts to students at risk of not retaining or who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, to very intensive work by student success coaches, from meetings with me and deans and faculty that I mentioned. I believe all these things are going to go a long way, because our retention rate from first to second year is between 83 and 88%. So that is better than most colleges in the country. The national average is about 65%, but it's not as good as I want it to be. Every student who comes to TU but then leaves is a waste of human capital and talent that is just intolerable to us as a school. So we're going to really put a lot of resources behind this, and I hope that you'll watch it over the next few years, because I do believe we could be a model for other universities working in this area too. Kelly?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And, you know, much of what the president said was what I was planning to offer as well, but I'll go a step further in the work that we're doing out of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have two programs that we're very proud of that are mentoring programs. They're connection programs specifically for student success. One of them is called the LINK program, and the other one is called the MAP program, where our students are paired with faculty members in order to be successful throughout the year. We're also working with our faculty senate right now around a retention program and trying to create another mentoring type program that won't necessarily take up as much time. A lot of times people will say, you know, I want to be a mentor, but I don't have enough time to really dedicate intensive time with students because of my research or because of my class schedule or family life or whatever. So we're in the process of putting together something that you may be familiar with, which is called speed mentoring. And it's an opportunity where we set up an evening of events where we have a number of different mentors in the room and a number of different students, and they get to sit in front of somebody, ask that individual a series of questions, academic support, social support, financial support, and then when the buzzer goes off, then they move to the very next person. That way we're maximizing that time that they have with all of that wisdom in the room, but it doesn't require much more than an evening of time from any of either the faculty or faculty administrators or the students. And if they wanted to continue a relationship with any individual who sat before them, then they have an opportunity to talk about what that's going to look like afterwards, so that some of those mentoring relationships, those deeper ones, happen more organically versus the pairing or the matching and the burden that it oftentimes feels for some people when we ask them to participate in things like that. So we're trying to think outside of the box. We're borrowing from our friends and colleagues at other institutions about what's working well for them. And we're bringing what we feel are going to be some really excellent options to our students so that they are going to feel as if they are getting the best service possible. And once more, that they feel as if they belong at TU because of the fact that the institution has invested in them in this way.
And thank you so much. And it's so good to hear just the progress that you've made, President Carson, in such a short time, and also Kelly. What I'd like to do right now is open it up to our audience to see if there are any questions. You can raise your hand to ask your question, or you can place it in the chat. As I stated in my opening comments, I want this session to be very interactive and informative and conversational. So at this time, I'd like to see if there are any questions from our audience. And I see, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name. I see it's Mike. Mr. Campbell, I'll do that. I'll let
there we
you
go.
Tell me your name. How about that?
Michael Campbell. Thank you so much, Dr. Denise. Mr. Carson, nice to have your ear. I was able to attend your negotiations class while you were at TU and your game theory class that were both excellent. So thank you for that. Following up on this question about scholarship in particular, I think the initiatives you named were pretty great. I think in detail, what I was hoping to hear today is TU actually going back and looking at the idea of need-based scholarship, given how deeply embedded in merit-based scholarships it's been for so long, and that just being such a barrier for students in the Tulsa area that even would qualify, but actually attend.
Yes, we are going to do that. It's going to be a mix always. The best schools in the country do have some merit scholarships, but we need to transition to a largely need-based financial aid system with a few merit scholarships for musicians, artists, students we think are essential to the success of the student body. But yes, we need to move to a world like that. I think we can actually be more effective in our financial aid policy, help us be a better university, help us diversify the student body in every facet of that word, and be actually almost a nationwide leader, because we do give, as you mentioned, extraordinary merit-based scholarship. That is the TU way. It has been for 30 years. But we do need to transition away from that. And you'll see this coming year, right? The first steps in that direction.
Thanks. Thomas, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dessie. Great to hear from you, Kelly, and President Carson. My question is in regards to the topic of student support. And I think a big aspect for student support, especially for students of color, is being able to have faculty and staff that look like them embedded at the university. And I know, unfortunately, we recently lost Earl Johnson at the university, who, from my experience as a student and alum, helped fill that void pretty incredibly at the university. So I'd like to kind of understand, what is our strategy in recruiting and retaining our faculty and staff of color?
Well, the loss of Earl is a profound one, of course. He was a student athlete at TU and had a number of positions over the years at the University of Tulsa. Many of you may know him well from your time here, and he will be sorely missed. So we all deserve to remember Earl tonight and appreciate the efforts he did to improve this campus in so many different ways. Some of you may have seen that we announced a new dean of the law school a couple of weeks ago. His name is Orrin Griffin. He comes from Mercer University in Georgia. He is African-American. He's the first African-American dean at the University of Tulsa. But that's the first step. So how do we diversify the faculty? I'm not going to say it's an easy project, but it is a situation at the University of Tulsa that must be decried, right? We do not have a diverse faculty, and the other schools struggle with this issue is no excuse for our own inability to succeed. So how do we do it? Well, I think the same way we got Orrin Griffin to come to the University of Tulsa: aggressive recruitment, identifying qualified candidates, making sure when we look at the pool of candidates for any position, whether it's staff, faculty, administration, that it has diverse candidates upon it. That's very, very important. Something almost like the Rooney Rule is used in the NFL to say, like, if this slate of candidates is not obviously diverse, it shows that we just did not do a good enough job of scanning for the best talent out there. Of trying to use university leaders to recruit, to encourage, to show examples as we go forward. So it's not easy. It is hard, slow work. But I can assure you that it is a priority of mine that we find more female faculty members, more faculty members of color, more administrators of color, more staff that reflects these same aspects of diversity. And I said, I think with Orrin's hiring, we're making a good first step, but I promise you it won't be the last step.
If I may, I'll jump in as well. One of the things that happened upon my arrival was that most of the deans, when they were going through the selection of faculty, would reach out to my office and say, Kelly, would you mind sitting on this committee? Can you help us to be able to figure out what we might be missing? Can you talk to us a little bit about what unconscious bias looks like in a selection process? I was deeply encouraged by that. And in large part, that was the reason why my stay at TU went from an interim position to permanent, because I felt that the institution, the faculty, staff, and administration was committed to this work in a way that they were seeking out help and support. The other thing that happened when I arrived was that there was a directive. I believe it came from the board, but down through Janet during her stint as interim president, that there was a mandate that if it would be deemed a unsuccessful search if they did not have a diverse pool. So if they did not have at least 2 or 3 candidates in that pool that were from underrepresented populations, then they were going to fail the search. Now that's what I understand now. Is it absolutely true? I have no idea. But that was the conversation that was had prior to my arrival, which demonstrated for me or as I arrived, which demonstrated for me the level of commitment to say, this is what we want, this is what we need. And even amongst the president's leadership team, when there were posts that were available in many of the different departments, people will reach out and say, Kelly, can you make sure that this gets to a really inclusive network? And we've done all of this, which I was very impressed with some of the places that they reached out to, but they said, we may be missing some things. If you have your own personal network that you want to send this out to, please do. So there is beyond that, a deep commitment to diversify our faculty. And I truly believe that people want to see it. I don't believe that there's anyone within the administration that will push back against that right now. And I kind of feel like there was also a question in there about our student population. And that's another thing that I have thrown myself into, and basically picked up the phone and called Patricia DeBolt, the Dean of Admissions, because the president said, we want to make sure that we're not just recruiting, or paying for people who can afford to come to this institution, but there are other people out there who can pay to attend TU. And so not only did I want to talk to her about finding those communities of color who have families who could pay, because they exist, right? And that helps to diversify our population of students. It also helps to challenge the narrative that the only students of color that come to a college campus are those who are poor, right? Or they need some help, or, oh, woe is them, these poor people, right? It helps change that narrative. But also, one of the things that was important to me was to go and talk to students, to talk about some of the programs and initiatives that we have that we believe will make us stand out from other institutions. And so I am working with Patty to visit some campuses. As a matter of fact, I start on the 27th going to Oklahoma City to visit a couple of schools to talk about TU and why it's important for folks to come here. So it is absolutely a priority. And it is something that we're trying to be intentional about, not just say, oh, we sure would like more diverse faculty, but we're doing something about it in ways that hadn't been done before. So we're really proud of that. And we will do everything that we can in order to support it.
Again, thank you both.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
In listening to everyone, I want to reflect on my career there at TU. It was ended in 1969 when I graduated, so things were a little different. But my success was contributed by my faculty advisor and about 4 faculty members in the business college, and including the president, Dr. Pascal Twyman. So my question is, are the faculty are in the program, are you using the faculty to help assist students with retention, graduation, and also career like I received? I got a lot of support. My faculty advisor door was always open. I could go talk to the guy anytime, and he got me probably at least a couple of summer jobs. We would call it maybe internships today, but the faculty to me is one of the keys to this. So my question is, what's the role of the faculty in the retention and graduation and success of the students? Thanks.
Thank you for that great question. The faculty play a critical role, an essential role. They are the front lines. They identify students who need the resources of the administration. They're the counselors or the professional advisors. They're the confidants. They're the academic support system, right? That is the students who will see. And so the faculty are very much engaged in this process. They're involved in all those retention efforts that I outlined in response to an earlier question. The faculty is very excited about this. They've identified the need to improve our retention rates. They're strongly committed to diversifying the faculty and student body both. And so just, I think, as you found when Pascal Twyman was president back in the late 1960s, when he was a very young man, and we had a great faculty, I think going forward, you're going to see us continue that tradition. That, after all, is why you come to TU. It's where you get to know your professor well, and they become someone who advises you about the critical life choices that await you as you leave college. So yes, they're very engaged, very supportive of this, and they are involved in planning all of these efforts from the jump.
And I just wanted to add too that after a few of the presentations that I provided when I first arrived here about what we were doing and what we hope to do, one of the initiatives was to develop or to provide a train the trainer for faculty and around unconscious bias. One of the things I've been working with one of the professors here on time was decolonizing your curriculum. And so she did a 5-part series bringing in professionals to talk about what does it mean in order to diversify your academic offerings in a classroom. And then now I'll be working with them to bring in some training on how, when conversations get heated in a classroom, how do they navigate that space if they are not a facilitator? So how do they keep that conversation going, the education of the students central to the conversation, but also to feel confident and competent in having some of those conversations. So we'll be going through a training process for them as well. I informed them that it would not happen until January 2022, but I already have like 10 names on the list ready to go. So faculty is really excited to be a part of this and want to be not passive participants in assisting our students with their success outside of their academic classroom, but truly be some significant partners in creating inclusion and belonging on this campus. So thanks for that question, Ronald.
And I saw Sam. Did you have a question?
Yes, good evening. I have part question and part reminder. I know for me personally, being part of a historically Black fraternity on campus provided a richer college experience for me. And there's been an effort over the last actually couple of years to return some of the historically Black fraternities and sororities to campus. And some of that effort's been hampered by COVID. But I think what we've seen is that we've sort of struggled to get students to come out to events largely sponsored in partnership with alumni chapters, local alumni chapters. And I'm curious as to, what else we can do if there are opportunities to partner on, perhaps community service events to raise the visibility for the local alumni chapters of the historically Black college, historically Black fraternities and sororities. If there are other ideas that maybe we've tried before and we want to try again, or brand new ideas for partnerships, if that's something that we're looking at and actively pursuing.
Let me start with that one. I welcome your suggestions about that. We want to do more of those kind of activities. We want to use the Greek life here, as well as those in other student organizations, to have a bigger public impact. We've been doing some of that. We have some remarkable young leaders, many students of color who are active in, say, the Greenwood area, North Tulsa, trying to improve conditions there and being involved in some of the Greenwood commemorations over the last few weeks as well. But I do think there's probably work to be done there that we can be much better about. And, one of the things I would like to do by establishing a relationship with this group is to get your ideas about how we can do that, because I don't have a blueprint in my pocket. This is how we get there. But with your help, really your help, I think we can develop one, because I do recognize its importance, and I can help push it if we can co-create that.
Thank you. I want to jump in on that one too, because as a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, I too am committed to the Black Greek life experience on a college campus. I went to a small private institution, and again, not unlike Tulsa, and that being a part of that Black Greek letter organization was incredibly important to me. That community that opened up for me really helped to retain not just me on campus, but so many others as well. And that was in the height of the second run of a boom of membership, which was in the 80s. Now, I will also say that one of the things that I discovered is that there is a need to bring the National Pan-Hellenic Council together on campus so that we're not working in silos and trying to do this by ourselves. There is a way to bring the whole community back together. Now, I know that there's a couple of Deltas on campus, a few AKs, and I think maybe some Kappas or Alphas or something like that. But there's not a large population. I think that what we do have on campus need to work together in order to generate more interest within our organizations, and visibility is a big part of that. And so the new advisor for Greeks on campus, I can't recall his name, I'm terrible with names, but he's reached out to myself and Amanda here in my office and want to talk more about how we can provide something. Now, on the 22nd of the month, I believe, there's going to be an informational, an NPHC informational. And my intention was to go and talk to the students and offer up some ideas on potentially how we can strengthen that. And we want to partner in that. Our office would love to partner in order to make sure that we're changing the narrative, because there are a lot of people who we've lost over the years who did not want to participate in Black Greek letter organizations because of the reputations that many of our organizations were beginning to get around hazing. But I think that we can do some repair of that. So,
if I
thanks for the
could,
question.
if I could, please. My name is Brenda Nels Alford, and I am a graduate of 1983 from the University of Tulsa, the niece of the first Black faculty member at the University of Tulsa. And I am a very proud AKA. Our graduate chapter is working in conjunction with the university and other organizations to basically improve those efforts of communication. And I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, as you have shared. So I am very excited about the conversations that I've heard today. It makes me think about my aunt and everything that she did to try to make sure that all the students felt like they had a place at the University of Tulsa. And I'm so very proud that we are trying to continue that legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Shanae, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, that is correct. I just wanted to jump in real quick. Just to say again, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I also work in the athletic department at TU. So just wanted to address real quick about the fraternities and sororities. So I have been working with Will, that's the person that Kelly was referring to, who is on campus. We have tried, I'll put it that way. This is not the first time we've done an informational. I think part of it is just the visibility. Sam, you were here, we did that, I guess a year and a half ago, where we did something in the, I can't even think of the name of the building right now off the top of my head, but we did have representation and we only had about 10 students that showed up. But I think a lot of it goes back to the education piece of students don't know what the requirements are to be in fraternities and sororities. And so a big education piece. I've also worked with the National Pan-Hellenic Alumni chapter, and the event that Kelly was mentioning for the 22nd, unfortunately, I haven't gotten a response back. So I don't think we're going to have that because I didn't get anyone to say, yes, I'm interested, I'll be there. And the idea behind it was we were going to do just at lunch, have information tables out so people could pick up information about, fraternities and sororities. And like I said, I didn't get a response back. I have been working with Will, and previously I'd worked with Earl and Allison Garrison, who was in the position. So there's been work done. There just hasn't been a lot of movement, unfortunately. But I think that goes back to maybe one program a year. So it's kind of, well, they had one program and then I didn't hear anything else. So a lot of it is visibility. And again, I've been working with NPHC because there are a lot, the alumni chapters, because there are not undergrad students. So currently there's one member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. There are 2 AKAs, and then there's 1 Kappa, and the Kappa is in the grad, and he just graduated. So he's in the grad chapter. So this is an area, no, Cap, there are no houses on campus. I just saw that. So I think part of it is just education. And again, we are working with campus to try to make this a better effort, because I think there's interest. I just think people don't know. So just wanted to throw that out there, that there has been some work in this area.
Thank you so much for that, Shanae. The other thing that Cap just asked a question about housing. I will say that this year we had the opportunity to move from different locations across campus. From what I understand, my predecessor, Jackie, was officed in the Collins Hall, while Amanda was in Hardesty on the 3rd floor or 2nd floor, and then 3rd floor. And then the Multicultural Resource Center was on the 1st floor. So we were disconnected. And we had the opportunity to move over the summer into what used to be the True Blue Neighbors House on Sorority Row. And one of the conversations that Amanda and I had with student activities, as well as with residence life, was that the moment that we are done utilizing the residential area of the back of this building for COVID quarantine, we hope to be able to reclaim that space, have on the lower level be the Multicultural Resource Center and potentially a entrepreneurial incubator. And then on the 2nd floor, because there's so few Black Greek letter organizations, to have one wing of the residential area be dedicated for the few men that we have on campus, and on one wing be dedicated to the few sororities that we have on campus. And so that way on Sorority Row, there is a Black Greek letter presence in the residences, but also connected to the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So that is one of our goals and our plans, but COVID is not cooperating. So, I'm not sure if that will be able to be something that we will see in 2022. It might not be until, the fall of 2023 already. But this is what we would want to do. And we are starting with informationals, bringing the students out, and maybe even just having a letter wearing day where students could come into our space so that they're visible, and because that's a big part of it, being visible.
And I promise, Kelly, I'll support that. Once we get COVID under wraps, the back end of the True Blue House will be devoted to these kind of projects.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Cap, I see that you have a question, so go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, real quickly. I know there was a department, NCAA department, that was developed for Black athletes. Are we working with the NCAA in trying to do something with that new department that they've created? In particular,
go ahead. No,
I was going to say, in particular, the department that Derek Gregg went to and left, that they created for student athletes.
The one when he went to Indianapolis to work for the NCAA before Northwestern. Yeah. So I think we still have deep ties into that, but I'll have to get back with you, Cap. I'll personally email you and the group here and let you know what we're continuing to do with that particular organization. So I don't have an answer for you tonight, but I will follow up with you on that.
Cap, this is Shanae again. I'm not sure if you're talking about the Racial Equality Action Group, which is part of the American Athletic Conference, or are you referring to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion designee that each NCAA institution has a designee on campus? So I'm not really sure which one you're talking about, but the Racial Equality Action Group, I am on that, and I am actually the Athletic Department Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion designee. So I'm not really sure, but I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, perfect. I think there's a need for mental health in student athletes these days that simply is not there. So, we can probably work on that.
The conference office has an initiative called Powerful Minds. And so we select a week in the fall and in spring, where we address that with our student athletes.
Cap, I'll also say that one of the very first trainings that I did was upon arrival, and Shanae reached out and said, "Can you come and do some work with our students of color, our student athletes of color around training, to talk to them a little bit, because there was still some emotional and mental health issues that we needed to begin to address." And I think that many of the students just wanted to know that they had some support. Again, advocacy in an upper level administrator on campus. And so that was one of the first things that I did upon arrival, in addition to some training for some of the staff over there. And Rick Dixon was incredibly supportive of my being there and working with the population. So I know that there are efforts happening, which again, I'm so encouraged by that, because things are happening in places that, from what I understand, just 4 or 5 years ago, it wouldn't have happened. So it's very encouraging.
And thank you so much. We have time for a few more questions from our audience. Any additional questions, thoughts? I see some great dialogue and suggestions in the chat, and we'll be sure to capture those. Any other questions, thoughts, commentary? No? All right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for tonight. I certainly appreciate the interaction, the conversation. Again, thank you, President Carson and Kelly. Absolutely wonderful. If there are additional questions that you think through, or once you have an opportunity to listen to the replay, you can submit those questions to tualumni@utulsa.edu. We'll drop that information in the chat. If there's anything else that you want to share with Kelly and President Carson and his cabinet, also feel free to do that. Again, as a reminder, we will be having our marquee event with the Black Alumni Association with our reunion on Friday, October 7th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the McFarland Library. I encourage everyone to come. This is our opportunity to come home and reunite with one another. I will be coming in from New York, so if I can come all the way in, folks there locally, you can certainly be there. I look forward. This will not be our only session that we'll have. We will have these periodically throughout the year to check in, to ensure that President Carson is held accountable to what he says, and then also be a resource to Kelly and her team. So once again, I thank you for what you've done, attending tonight, the questions and the interactions. And if there's anything else, yes.
Can I just say a word of conclusion before everyone signs off? Are you okay, Dessie, with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to say to everyone here before we go for the evening, how much I appreciate Dessie organizing this. Thank you for your leadership of this organization, and to everyone who's part of this. We need you to be part of the Tulsa family. And we've already talked about 2 amazing African-American alumni or participants in TU life. One was Earl Johnson, who did so much to make this university a better place. And we also referenced kind of obliquely Cecilia Palmer, the first African-American faculty member, whose photo hangs just downstairs here in the alumni hall here. And so both very important parts of that. It was nice to reference them. I'm putting in the chat my personal cell phone that I carry with me everywhere. And I want you guys to take that down. Feel free to text me, call me, raise any concerns you have. If you have questions about what we're doing or suggestions about how to make TU better, I invite you to avoid all the other bureaucracy and just call me directly or text me directly. I promise you I'll respond. The only caveat I give to you is I've also given the entire student body and their parents my cell phone. And so I get about 50 texts a night from students, sometimes their family. But I do respond on the same day, but it's a lot of texts coming in. But I invite you to be part of this greater campus conversation, because the most thing I need from you, more than anything else, is to be evangelists for this university. I believe TU is a great place. You are testaments to our success in the past, but I need your great words to make us as successful in the future. So please, preach the good word about what TU is all about. And please reach out to me, to Kelly directly, and let us know what we can do to still better the experience of our students here.
Can I say
Thank you,
this about
President
Mrs.
Carson.
Palmer? Mrs. Palmer was my speech teacher at Bunch and Carver Junior High School. And
Is that right?
I was in every play from the 5th grade through the 9th grade that Mrs. Palmer produced. She forced me to be on stage, and it helped me all through life. She's a great woman, great teacher.
Terrific. That's a great testament.
Thank you for saying so.
And thank you so much for sharing. And Kelly, did you have any closing remarks?
I just dropped something in the box saying that, you know, we're always looking for alumni to offer your time and expertise for our mentoring programs, for the events that we have. It's going to be, when we talk about visibility, we're not just talking about Black Greeks on campus and their visibility, right? I mean, having former alumni or alumni come back to campus with their TU gear and for specific events and whatnot, offering their time and talent, it's going to go a long way for students to feel like, you mean to tell me after I graduate, I can still be involved and that other graduates still want to be involved? I think that that's amazing. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to drop my email in here as well. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
And thank you both so much. And again, I would love for every every person who attended tonight to be a part of the Black Alum Leadership Council. We need you. We need your help. We have a lot of heavy lifting to do. We will follow up to share with you ways that you could become a member of that committee. I hope to see all of you at homecoming. With that, if there are any last final thoughts, it's the top of the hour. I want to be very respectful of everyone's time. So if there's no other thoughts from President Carson or Kelly, again, thank you. You all stay safe, safe travels, and look forward to talking with you and seeing you soon. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.